The day I proposed to Jessica was the happiest day of my life. We stood at that beautiful overlook in coastal Maine, the waves crashing against the rocks below us as I got down on one knee. The joy in her eyes when she said yes convinced me I was the luckiest man alive. For months, we planned our perfect wedding, picked out our dream home, and talked about our future together. Then came that night, after our engagement party, when she had too much champagne. My world collapsed when she whispered those words I can never unhear. I wish I had never left Ryan for you. Before I continue this story that changed my entire life, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like button if you have ever had a moment that shattered your faith in love. I first met Jessica 3 years ago at a company event in Boston. I had been working as a software engineer at this tech firm for about 2 years when she joined the marketing department. What caught my attention immediately was not just her physical beauty, but the way her smile lit up the entire room. She had this infectious laugh and a sharp intelligence that came through in every conversation. Our first real interaction happened completely by accident. I was sitting at a coffee shop near our office, working on some code during my lunch break, when she walked in. The place was packed, and the only available seat was at my table. She asked if she could join me, and I remember feeling unusually nervous as I moved my laptop aside to make room for her. We talked for almost an hour that day, completely losing track of time. There was this immediate connection between us that I had never experienced before with anyone else. By the end of that conversation, I had asked for her number, and to my surprise and delight, she gave it to me without hesitation. Our first official date was at this upscale Italian restaurant downtown. I remember being so nervous that I changed my outfit 3 times before leaving my apartment. Jessica showed up wearing a simple blue dress that made her eyes look even more vivid. Over pasta and wine, we discovered how much we had in common. We both loved hiking, shared a passion for indie music, and could talk for hours about documentary films. That night she told me about growing up in Denver, her college years at Berkeley, and her previous relationships. Ryan came up naturally in conversation. She described him as her serious college boyfriend, someone important to her development as a person. According to Jessica, they had broken up primarily because of distance after graduation. He moved to Seattle for a job while she came to Boston. She spoke about him with respect, but gave me the impression that chapter was firmly closed. Our relationship progressed quickly after that. Everything just felt right with Jessica. We could talk for hours without getting bored. Our values aligned, and our differences complemented each other perfectly. After 8 months of dating, we decided to move in together. My apartment was bigger, so she moved in with me, bringing her collection of books and vintage movie posters that somehow made my place feel more like a real home. Both our families were supportive of our relationship. Jessica went out of her way to build strong connections with my parents and my younger sister. She would send my mom handwritten birthday cards, and remembering exactly which kind of wine my father preferred. My sister, who was typically wary of my girlfriends, adored Jessica from the start. They would even go shopping together sometimes without me sharing inside jokes I was never privy to. After 2 years together, I knew beyond any doubt that Jessica was the one. I spent months planning the perfect proposal, secretly consulting with her best friend about the ring style she would love. I chose a vintage-inspired sapphire and diamond ring that reminded me of her eyes. I arranged a weekend trip to a coastal town in Maine, a place she had mentioned wanting to visit. The proposal itself was perfect. We hiked up to this stunning overlook just before sunset. The ocean stretched out below us, painted in gold and pink by the setting sunday. When I got down on one knee and opened the ring box, her hands flew to her mouth, and tears filled her eyes immediately. Her yes was immediate and enthusiastic, and we spent that night calling our families and closest friends to share the news. The following months were filled with wedding planning. We found a beautiful venue, a restored barn outside the city with views of the countryside. Jessica threw herself into every detail from the flowers to the menu. We sent out save the dates, booked our honeymoon to Alaska, and even put a down payment on a house in a quiet suburb. Everything was falling into place, exactly as we had dreamed. I truly believed our relationship was rock solid. Jessica was not just my fiancée, but my best friend. I trusted her completely, and never once questioned her love for me. We talked about having kids growing old together, and all those future milestones couples dream about sharing. I felt complete with her, and I thought she felt the same about me. The first signs that something was off were subtle. About 4 months before our wedding date, Jessica started working later than usual. At first I thought nothing of it. She mentioned a big marketing campaign her team was launching, so the extra hours made sense. But then I noticed other changes that were harder to explain away. She became protective of her phone, changing the password and always keeping it face down. Our conversations grew shorter, less intimate. When I would ask about her day, her answers became vague. The woman who once shared every detail with me was suddenly keeping parts of herself hidden. We started having small arguments over nothing. Things that never bothered us before suddenly became points of contention. I would leave a dish in the sink, and she would react as if I had committed some terrible offense. I tried to tell myself it was just wedding stress, that planning such a big event was bound to cause tension. Then came the reunion with her college friends. One of her old roommates was visiting Boston and organized a get-together with their Berkeley crowd. Jessica mentioned casually that Ryan would be there. He was apparently in town for a business conference. The way her voice changed when she said his name sent a cold feeling through me. But I pushed it aside. They were friends long before I came into the picture, I told myself. It would be weird if she avoided him. The night of the gathering, Jessica spent an unusual amount of time getting ready. She tried on multiple outfits, settled on a dress I had never seen before, and applied her makeup with meticulous care. Again, I tried to dismiss my unease. She wanted to look good in front of old friends. That was natural, right? At the gathering, I watched as Jessica lit up the moment Ryan walked through the door. He was tall, athletic-looking, with the confident air of someone used to commanding attention. Jessica hugged him for what seemed like too long. And for the rest of the night, she was somehow always near him, always in conversation with him. I tried to be social to connect with her other friends, but I could not stop watching Jessica and Ryan together. They had inside jokes I was not part of, references to shared experiences that excluded me. More than once I caught her looking at him with an expression I could not quite define, but that made my stomach twist. On the ride home, I asked her about Ryan casually. She immediately became defensive, asking why I was interrogating her. The word choice struck me as odd. A simple question had never been an interrogation before. We went to bed that night without resolving anything, a cold space between us in the bed we shared. Over the next few weeks, Ryan seemed to become a regular topic in our lives. Jessica mentioned running into him at a coffee shop, then lunch, to catch up on old times. I discovered text messages between them that, while not explicitly inappropriate, had a familiarity that made me uncomfortable. When I confronted Jessica about it, she accused me of spying and insisted they were just friends reconnecting. Our arguments became more frequent and more heated. I was not imagining things I knew that much. Something had changed between us, and Ryan was at the center of it. Jessica denied everything, claimed I was being paranoid and insecure. Maybe I was. But that did not explain why she started keeping her whereabouts vague on certain afternoons, or why she would sometimes come home smelling of unfamiliar cologne. Then came the night of our engagement celebration dinner. Both our families had flown in for the weekend, excited to meet each other properly before the wedding. The restaurant was beautiful. The food excellent. Jessica drank more champagne than usual, becoming increasingly emotional as the night went on. Back in our hotel room, as I was loosening my tie, she suddenly burst into tears. I went to comfort her, thinking it was just the emotion of having all our loved ones together. But then she looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes and spoke the words that would change everything. "Sometimes I wish I had never left Ryan for you. He understood me in a way that you probably never will." The silence that followed was deafening. I stepped back from her, my mind struggling to process what I had just heard. Jessica immediately tried to take it back, claiming it was just the alcohol talking, that she did not mean it. But some words cannot be unspoken, and some wounds cannot be quickly bandaged with excuses. I did not sleep that night. I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of our relationship in my mind, looking for signs I might have missed. Had I been a placeholder all this time? A second choice? The very foundation of what I thought we had built together suddenly felt unstable beneath my feet. The morning after the engagement dinner, I told Jessica I needed some space to process what she had said. Her intoxicated confession had sobered her up instantly. The panic in her eyes was real as she begged me to forgive her, insisting it was meaningless drunk. Talk nothing more. But the words had struck too deep, revealing a truth I could no longer ignore. I packed a small bag and called my best friend Marcus, who immediately offered his spare room. Jessica followed me to the door, tears streaming down her face, clutching at my arm as I tried to leave. I gently removed her hands and walked out, her sobs following me down the hallway. At Marcus' place, I finally let myself break down. All the confusion, anger, and heartbreak I had been holding back came pouring out as I explained the situation to him. Marcus listened without judgment, letting me work through my tangled emotions. When my phone would not stop buzzing with calls and texts from Jessica, he suggested I turn it off for a while. "Just breathe," he advised. "Do not make any decisions yet." For 3 days, I barely left his apartment. I called in sick to work and tried to sort through my thoughts. Jessica continued her campaign to reach me eventually, resorting to emailing me when I would not answer her calls. Her messages ranged from desperate apologies to angry accusations that I was overreacting to a meaningless comment. On the 4th day, I returned to our apartment, when I knew Jessica would be at work. I needed some more clothes and personal items. While there, I used our shared laptop to check my email. That is when I found them. Jessica had forgotten to log out of her account, and there they were, a series of exchanges with Ryan dating back 2 months. My hands shook as I read through them. They had been meeting for coffee, for lunch sometimes, just to walk and talk. No evidence of physical cheating, but the emotional betrayal was laid bare in those messages. In one, she confessed to wondering what life would have been like if they had tried harder to make their relationship work after college. In another, she described feeling confused about her feelings. Ryan's responses were careful, never explicitly encouraging her to leave me, but never discouraging her confessions either. I printed out several of the most damning emails and returned to Marcus' place, a cold determination replacing my confusion. That evening, I texted Jessica and asked her to meet me at a neutral location, a quiet park near our apartment. She was already waiting when I arrived, looking hopeful at first, then concerned, as she registered my expression. Before she could speak, I placed the printed emails on the bench between us. Her face drained of color as she realized what they were. For a moment, she did not even try to deny it. Then the explanations came rushing out. She and Ryan had reconnected as friends. Old feelings had surfaced unexpectedly. She was confused, but she had chosen me. She loved me. She wanted our future together. I have never felt pain like I did in that moment, standing there listening to the woman I loved explain why her emotional affair was somehow acceptable, why I should understand her confusion. The worst part was hearing her say, "I chose you," as if loving someone was a rational decision you made after weighing all options, not an unstoppable force that left you no choice at all. "I do not want to be anyone's second choice," I told her, my voice steadier than I expected. "I do not want to be the safe option, the sensible decision. I want to be someone's everything, the way you have always been mine." Jessica started sobbing, then insisting I was misunderstanding everything. But the clarity I felt in that moment was undeniable. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the engagement ring she had left on the bathroom counter at our apartment. I placed it on top of the emails. "The wedding is off," I said quietly. "I cannot marry someone who is still in love with someone else." Jessica collapsed onto the bench, her composure completely shattered. She begged me not to do this, swore she would cut all contact with Ryan, promised to go to couples therapy, anything to fix what she had broken. The sight of her kneeling on the ground, clutching at my hands, tore at my heart. But I knew if I wavered now, I would spend the rest of my life wondering if I was truly her first choice. I helped her to her feet, wiped a tear from her cheek, and walked away. Her desperate pleas echoed behind me, but I did not turn around. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. The aftermath of calling off a wedding 3 months before the date is as painful and complicated as you might imagine. I had to make dozens of phone calls to family members and friends, explaining in the vaguest terms possible why the wedding was canceled. My mother, bless her, took over contacting the venue and vendors to cancel our reservations, saving me from those painful conversations at least. I moved out of our shared apartment, completely finding a small place closer to downtown. Jessica and I agreed to split the cost of the lost deposits. Each returned gift, each apologetic email to a would-be guest was like reopening a wound that refused to heal. Work became both a refuge and a challenge. Jessica and I were still at the same company, though thankfully in different departments. I arranged with my manager to be assigned to projects that would minimize our contact. In the rare instances when we passed each other in the hallway or cafeteria, the pain in her eyes was almost unbearable. But I held firm to my decision. Jessica did not accept our breakup easily. The first week, I received flowers at my new apartment. Every day, each with increasingly desperate notes attached. When I did not respond, she escalated to leaving voice messages, sometimes calling late at night when she had clearly been drinking. She enlisted our mutual friends as intermediaries, sending messages through them when I blocked her number. Some friends took her side, suggesting I was being too harsh, that everyone says things they do not mean sometimes. Others supported my decision, particularly those who had witnessed the change in our relationship after Ryan reappeared. The lowest point came when Jessica showed up at my parents' house, hoping to convince them to intervene on her behalf. My mother, though kind to her, firmly supported my decision and asked her to respect my need for space. Throughout this storm, I focused on rebuilding my life piece by piece. I threw myself into a challenging new project at work, volunteering for the components no one else wanted to tackle. I joined a gym and began working out regularly, the physical exertion providing an outlet for my anger and confusion. Meditation became part of my daily routine, giving me tools to observe my painful thoughts without being consumed by them. I reconnected with old friends I had somewhat neglected during my relationship with Jessica, rebuilding those connections with a new appreciation for their stability. I had planned to surprise Jessica with cooking classes after our honeymoon, a shared activity we could enjoy together. Instead, I took them alone, finding unexpected satisfaction in learning to prepare meals for myself. Small acts of self-care became important rituals, buying fresh flowers for my apartment, taking long walks along the Charles River, reading books I had been putting off. 2 months after our breakup, I decided to take the trip to Alaska anyway. It had been planned as our honeymoon, but I reclaimed it as a solo adventure. The vastness of the wilderness, the majesty of the mountains and glaciers helped put my pain in perspective. Standing before such timeless natural beauty, my broken engagement seemed less like the end of the world and more like a painful but necessary chapter in my life. While I was rebuilding, Jessica was apparently falling apart. Through mutual friends, I heard she had started therapy. After one particularly emotional night where she had called several friends in distress, her parents came to stay with her for a week. Eventually, she requested a transfer to our company's Seattle office, a move that would take her across the country. Before she left, she sent me one final email. Unlike her previous messages, This one contained no pleas for reconciliation, no desperate declarations of love. Instead, it was a genuine apology. She took full responsibility for her actions, acknowledged the pain she had caused, and expressed gratitude for the time we had shared. She was moving to Seattle not just for a fresh start, she wrote, but to finally face her unresolved feelings for Ryan directly, rather than keeping them as an idealized. What if that had poisoned what we had built together? I did not reply to the email, but its honesty provided a kind of closure I had not expected. 6 months after the breakup, we saw each other again, at the wedding of a mutual friend. I had brought no date, and neither had Jessica. She looked different, somehow more grounded. We exchanged awkward hellos at the reception, then found ourselves alone at the bar later in the evening. I was surprised by how civil our conversation was, how the anger had faded to a dull ache rather than the sharp pain of before. Jessica told me she had indeed moved to Seattle, but that her reunion with Ryan had quickly shown her that her feelings had been more about nostalgia than love. He was not the person she had built up in her mind, and she was not the college girl he had once dated. "I think I was afraid of how much I loved you," she confessed quietly. "It scared me how completely you had become part of my life. So I created this fantasy escape hatch. Ryan was safe because he was not really an option, just an idea of a different path. I did not realize I was sabotaging the best thing in my life until it was too late. I found that I believed her. More surprisingly, I found that I forgave her, not out of any desire to reconcile, but for my own peace of mind. Carrying anger had become exhausting. The encounter provided unexpected healing. I walked away from that wedding reception feeling lighter than I had in months. Jessica and I would never be together again, but we had shared enough of our lives that I could wish her well without bitterness. In the year since ending my engagement, I have learned more about myself than in all my previous relationships combined. I discovered that self-respect must be the foundation of any healthy relationship. I learned that real love should not leave you questioning your worth or wondering if you are enough. I have started dating again recently, cautiously. There is a woman named Lauren I met through a hiking group. We are taking things slowly, getting to know each other without pressure. I am more aware now of the importance of honest communication, of addressing problems directly before they fester into something unmanageable. What happened with Jessica and me was painful, but I am grateful I discovered the truth before we made vows we could not keep. Some would say I was too harsh, too unforgiving. Perhaps they are right. But I believe we all deserve to be someone's first choice, someone's absolute certainty. In walking away from a relationship that made me doubt my value, I found a stronger version of myself. I no longer ask myself why I was not good enough. Instead, I remind myself daily that I deserve love without question marks. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision that brought pain in the short term, but ultimately led to growth? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that choosing yourself is not selfish. It is necessary. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.